Today, I would like to talk about the issue of developmental disorders. Longtime viewers of this channel understand that, as an issue that goes beyond developmental disorders, there are countless horrifying lies that are rampant in this society. Among the people who understand these countless lies, there are some who are quite academically excellent and have a wide range of scientific knowledge. In many cases, such people are unable to notice lies in areas in which they are strong because of their knowledge. Well, if you look up developmental disorders on Wikipedia, you'll find the following. Developmental disorders are conditions in which people have deficiencies in their bodies, learning, language, or behavior. And these conditions appear during the developmental period of humans. In most cases, the cause is a congenital bias in brain function, and lack of ability due to developmental bias will not be cured throughout life. Is there a lifelong gap in brain function that cannot be cured? Is this true? Did you have any doubts about this description? Furthermore, developmental disorders are defined as autism, Asperger's syndrome, other pervasive developmental disorders, learning disabilities, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and similar brain function disorders whose symptoms usually appear at a young age. It is said to be something to do. Looking back at myself, I, Endo, have a learning disability, attention deficit, hyperactivity, and probably Asperger's. In my elementary school classroom, I was probably one of the most restless children in the class, unable to concentrate in class. I was also a problem child, unable to calm down and making noise even when told to be quiet and calm down. I was attention deficit, hyperactive, and had a learning disability. Are these purely genetic? When asked this question, there are many parts of me that feel that this is not necessarily the case. In fact, descriptions of developmental disorders say that it is a brain dysfunction and often cannot be cured throughout life. But I have clearly improved. In other words, brain dysfunction, which can never be cured, is an inappropriate definition, at least for myself. What are the typical developmental disorders in children? Inattention, such as forgetting something or being late. Hyperactivity and impulsivity, unable to sit still. Difficulty in interpersonal relationships. Limited interests. Difficulty in reading, writing, listening, speaking, calculation, and reasoning, and so on. When I look back on myself, I remember that when I was a child, I was confused in most fields and gave the adults around me a hard time. I think it is clear that the roots of these so-called abnormalities are all related to the brain. Forgetting things, being late, being unable to sit still, difficulty in interpersonal relationships, limited interests, and learning problems such as reading and writing. Certainly, everything has to do with the brain. The official medical opinion is that these problems are related to brain function, are genetic, and may never be cured. Either way, it's a brain problem. However, in the first place, are brain problems limited to genetic problems? Could there be other factors? This is just a matter of course. But to say that brain-related problems are limited to genetics is an extremely violent conclusion. It almost seems like a maliciously crafted conclusion, telling us to give up because there is no solution. Perhaps this is actually malicious. Official medicine and the medical community, for some reason, consider developmental disorders to be untreatable. And based on that premise, drug therapy seems to be widespread. Furthermore, it is possible to realize continuous billing for drug therapy that treats problems that cannot be cured for a lifetime. However, what actually happens when it comes to developmental disorders? To say that developmental disorders are brain problems that are almost exclusively caused by genetics is a malicious definition that nullifies the goals of the parents' efforts. If an authoritative doctor tells you that your child has a brain problem due to genetics, a normal parent would say, well, there's nothing we can do about it. However, in reality, genetics is only a small part of brain problems, and there are many factors that can have a negative impact on brain function. Biological factors. This is due to problems with the neurotransmission system, genetic factors, hormonal abnormalities, inflammation, etc. Psychological factors. This is a stubborn belief, a parent's values, etc. Social factors. These include trauma, neglect, poverty, and loneliness. What do you think? The brain is influenced by a wide range of things, and developmental disorders are considered to be problems with the brain. The fact that even the authoritative Wikipedia blames almost all the developmental disorders on the brain is simply because the parents, who are supposed to be the key to the child's recovery, are the most irresponsible. Don't you feel like this is malicious brainwashing to put you in a position? Even if you don't feel this way, the extremely one-sided definition of a developmental disorder as a brain problem caused by genetics with no hope of lifelong recovery is itself a massive negative effects. This is because it is common sense that the brain is influenced physiologically, psychologically, and socially without even thinking about it. Your personality and nature have been influenced by physiological, psychological, and social factors. This is common sense even if you don't think about it. However, official medicine considers developmental disorders to be problems of the brain and says that the brain problems associated with developmental disorders are genetic and there is little hope of recovery. This is a silly story. Research has shown that developmental disorders caused by brain problems and mental disorders caused by brain problems are caused by things that most affect the brain. What influences the brain the most? Research has shown that this is metabolism. Metabolism refers to all the chemical reactions that occur within the body, and the major factors that affect these chemical reactions are the many substances that are taken in from outside the body. Substances taken in from outside the body are food. In other words, diet is the most important factor that affects the brain. Of course, there is no doubt that psychological and social factors influence the brain, but diet has the greatest effect on the brain as a substance. It goes without saying that genetics also have an influence on the brain, but common sense suggests that it is a rare case for a child to develop a brain-related disease due to genetics alone. I think you can understand. Hormonal and inflammatory conditions also affect the brain, but I hope you all understand that what has the biggest influence on these things is not genetics, but diet. Food has a huge impact on the brain, and this brain condition is the very cause of developmental disorders. The official scientific view, even Wikipedia's definition of developmental disorders, says that developmental disorders are brain problems. However, diet has a big impact on brain problems and developmental disorders. And now let's take a look at the latest American research to find out what causes mental disorders and abnormal mental states, which are brain problems like developmental disorders. The number of people with mental illnesses and mental disorders is increasing year by year, reaching 1 billion people worldwide, and the number is expected to increase further. He says that the essence of the problem in the medical industry is not that people around the world are not able to receive treatment, but that the treatment itself is not working properly. That's right. We are in an industry where the treating side declares that developmental disorders are a genetic problem and a brain problem that will never be cured. The reality is that the root cause of mental illnesses in general cannot be cured. However, even with that nonsense in the medical and psychiatric world, it is possible to analyze the problem scientifically. Over decades of practice, the correlation has become clearer. For example, people with serious mental illness are 2 to 3 times more likely to be obese or have diabetes. People with mental illness more often develop heart and vascular disease. Depression doubles the chance of developing Alzheimer's disease. People with schizophrenia are 20 times more likely to develop Alzheimer's or dementia by age 66 than the average person. Older people who suffer from depression are 6 times more likely to have an epileptic seizure. Even when viewed from the opposite direction, this trend is supported. Additionally, obese people are up to 75% more likely to suffer from mental illness. People with diabetes are twice as likely to be depressed and stay depressed 4 times as long as people without diabetes. People with heart disease and blood vessel-related conditions are 3 to 5 times more likely to suffer from depression. With Alzheimer's, nearly 100% of patients suffer from psychotic symptoms. These include depression, obsessive-compulsive disorder, insomnia, hallucinations, and schizophrenia. People with schizophrenia are 22 times more likely to develop Alzheimer's disease by age 66 than normal. Conversely, about half of people with Alzheimer's will complain of typical symptoms of schizophrenia. Additionally, people with mental illnesses age faster than normal and die earlier. Statistically speaking, people suffering from severe depression or schizophrenia have an average lifespan of 7 to 30 years shorter. Research has shown that all mental illnesses shorten lifespans. Relatively mild mental illnesses such as ADHD and personality disorders are no exception to this. You might think that the cause of death for people suffering from mental illness is suicide, but in reality, that number is not that large. Many die from heart attacks, strokes, diabetes, and Alzheimer's at a younger age than others. Why? Even the WHO has provided answers on this issue. It's 2016. These are the results of a survey regarding mental abnormalities in individuals. It states that the characteristics of people suffering from mental illness are overeating and lack of exercise. However, in psychiatric medicine, medication is being used all over the world, and this medicine has the effect of increasing weight and appetite. Did you understand? To be honest, the cause of mental illness, which is a problem with the brain, is obesity and overeating. And overeating causes not only obesity, but also diabetes. This is where the idea that brain problems are caused by metabolism comes from. Abnormal chemical reactions occur in the body, causing hormonal abnormalities and other abnormalities in brain function. The biggest cause of metabolic abnormalities is not genetics. That's something that anyone can easily understand, even if you're not an expert. Food is the biggest problem, and the most obvious one is overeating. Even the WHO objectively acknowledges this fact. The number one cause of mental illness is overeating and obesity. Developmental disorders are unilaterally defined as genetic brain abnormalities that are inherited from birth, and parents are led to believe that there is nothing they can do about it, but this is actually not the case. The number one cause of brain abnormalities and mental illnesses is diet. In the first place, it is extremely disrespectful to children to say that they are born with a mental illness. Food causes abnormalities in children's brains. There is a part here where it would be difficult to be misunderstood. This means that being obese does not mean you will have a mental illness. This means that eating habits that lead to obesity are the cause of mental illness. Eating habits that lead to obesity are eating habits that are high in carbohydrates. However, even if a person has a diet that is high in carbohydrates and causes mental illness, that does not necessarily mean that the person is obese. For example, if you are diabetic or have a weak pancreatic function, you will not become obese even if you consume large amounts of carbohydrates. However, it can also lead to diabetes, mental illness, and developmental disorders. In fact, if you carefully look at the situation on Twitter and other sites, you will find that when you see posts from mothers complaining that their child has a developmental disorder, most of the time the mother also suffers from mental illness, such as depression or ADHD. I'm having a problem with this. It's a trend that you'll notice right away because for some reason, most moms write such self-introductions in their profiles. Furthermore, if you search the post carefully, almost all of these mothers post some amount of sweets and carbohydrate-based meals. People suffering from mental illness or developmental disorders are not necessarily obese, but they almost certainly consume too much sugar. It's the children and the parents who are consuming too much sugar. A developmental disorder is a brain dysfunction. Brain dysfunction is similar to mental illness, and the cause of mental illness is obesity. And the biggest factor in obesity is sugar. In fact, sugar is the biggest cause of brain dysfunction, and developmental disorders are brain dysfunctions. Medical institutions and Wikipedia declare that developmental disorders, which are brain dysfunctions, are genetic disorders that cannot be cured. But the actual cause of brain dysfunction is carbohydrates. Why do so many mothers of children with developmental disabilities like sweets? And why do they enjoy eating them too? Although it is unlikely, these sweets and other carbohydrate foods were the cause of the child's developmental disorder. Unfortunately, foods such as sweets and sugar, such as rice, brown rice, wheat, bread, and noodles, have extremely high carbohydrate content, which is a direct cause of obesity, developmental disorders, and mental illness. The reality is that 1 cup of rice has the same amount of sugar as 18 sugar cubes, which is even higher than 500 milliliters of cola. Both rice and bread are clear causes of obesity, mental illness, and developmental disorders. I hope you understand that obesity and sugar are the main causes of mental illness and developmental disorders, which are brain dysfunction. Let me give you a little introduction to how it works. First, when carbohydrates are ingested as food, they secrete a hormone called insulin. This insulin, also known as the fat hormone, sends signals to the body to take in energy. Therefore, if you ingest too much carbohydrates, such as by eating too much rice, the nutrients will certainly be taken into your body, but all the nutrients that cannot be consumed will be stored as fat. So if you eat too much rice and bread, you will become obese. On the other hand, even if you eat too much tofu, which contains almost no carbohydrates, you won't be as likely to gain weight. Insulin, which is secreted when carbohydrates are ingested, has the effect of lowering blood sugar levels by allowing blood sugar to enter the body. When your blood sugar levels drop, you become sleepy. Therefore, feeling sleepy after eating is a phenomenon that occurs when blood sugar levels rise and then drop rapidly. And by the way, it's no wonder that if you eat a meal that doesn't contain carbohydrates, such as rice or noodles, you won't feel sleepy much or almost at all. This is because your blood sugar levels won't rise much unless you eat foods that are high in carbohydrates. When blood sugar levels rise, insulin lowers them, and your blood sugar levels will drop too low, making you sleepy. When blood sugar levels drop, a hormone that increases blood sugar levels, which is the opposite of insulin, is secreted. These are hormones such as cortisol and adrenaline. Both cortisol and adrenaline have the ability to raise blood sugar levels. Both cortisol and adrenaline have a stimulating effect on the mind. It's raising blood sugar levels. Insulin then lowers blood sugar levels and has an effect on the body that makes you sleepy. These mood swings occur over a relatively short period of time, such as a few hours. This state of intense mood swings is called manic depression. In fact, your mood is significantly influenced by your diet, especially carbohydrates. Additionally, cortisol and adrenaline are hormones secreted by or related to the adrenal glands. The adrenal glands secrete these hormones due to the influence of carbohydrates as well, and adrenal fatigue occurs when the adrenal glands are overworked and become fatigued. This adrenal fatigue means you are so depressed that you can't even get out of bed. Carbohydrates are nutrients that cause excessive secretion of hormones that have a significant effect on the mind and mood. An excessive intake of sugar also causes inflammation. This inflammation can manifest itself in the form of neuralgia, but the key point in this mental illness is inflammation of the brain. When the brain becomes inflamed, it naturally has a negative effect on brain function, leading to mental instability. Carbohydrates are the cause of excessive secretion of the hormones insulin, cortisol, and adrenaline, as well as inflammation in the brain and other parts of the body. The reason why this is so is because sugar causes metabolic problems, which are said to be the cause of all mental illnesses. A famous professor at Harvard University in the United States also said that mitochondrial function becomes abnormal. However, this is a very simple and clear understanding, and it is clearly understood. As I mentioned in last week's Perfect Health Techniques video, the important point is that carbohydrates are the most important thing in the world because they are sticky, like rice used as glue or rice cake. It's the cause. Carbohydrates such as rice, wheat, and sugar interfere with cell metabolism in the body. It sticks to various parts of the body. If the clinging occurs in the internal organs or other parts of the body, it becomes stuck and becomes cancer that appears to grow on its own. When sugar clings to the brain and brain cells, nutrients are not properly sent to the cranial nerves, which can lead to learning disabilities. In addition, the body tries to cope with this stiffness by increasing blood pressure, secreting excessive hormones, and distributing nutrients. Therefore, too much insulin is secreted. Over the long term, this excessive secretion of insulin can lead to diabetes and obesity. After all, it's the fat hormone. On the other hand, when insulin is produced in excess, cortisol and adrenaline are secreted in excess, which attempts to raise blood sugar levels, leading to adrenal fatigue. In addition to these long-term effects, the effect of insulin, which causes a rapid drop in blood sugar levels, can cause children to suddenly become unmotivated to do anything. Then you become exhausted and sleepy, but this time cortisol and adrenaline are secreted to raise your blood sugar levels, which have already fallen. Cortisol is a hormone that increases blood sugar levels when you feel threatened. Continuous secretion of cortisol makes you feel anxious. It is also a condition in which children develop anxiety due to the effects of a carbohydrate-rich diet, mainly rice. Also, as you know, adrenaline is a hormone of excitement, so when this adrenaline is secreted in excess due to the influence of carbohydrates, the body becomes restless and hyperactive. Children with developmental disorders are often easily distracted, have trouble concentrating, are anxious, hyperactive, and lethargic. All of these can be explained by the influence of hormones, and it is clear that daily eating habits are involved in the abnormal secretion of hormones. This dietary habit controls almost all chemical reactions in the body called metabolism. What has a radical effect on this chemical reaction is foods that are high in carbohydrates, mainly rice, wheat, and sugar. Eating habits and metabolism have the greatest impact on brain dysfunction. It's definitely not the child's nature or genetics. You now understand why parents of children with developmental disabilities post photos of ridiculously sweet sweets, rice, brown rice, and noodles on Twitter. Is it? The cause of children's developmental disorders is their parents' diet. This carbohydrate-centered diet also causes inflammation in the brain and body, further causing problems in brain function. At home, these children are fed a diet consisting mainly of sweets, rice, bread, and noodles. And when they go to school, they are forced to eat a diet consisting primarily of bread, noodles, and rice. It is no wonder that so many children are obese and have developmental and learning disabilities. Schools are also carefully quoting harmful and fabricated nutritional information and continuing to instill in children and parents that carbohydrates are an essential nutrient. It's no wonder that developmental disorders are increasing exponentially if we are constantly fed carbohydrate-rich foods such as rice, brown rice, wheat, and noodles, which cause brain dysfunction both at school and at home. In this way, children who eat too much sugar and those who grow up to become adults will develop various diseases if they don't change their eating habits. That is, if they don't limit their sugar intake. It will look like this. These include diabetes, cancer, heart disease, vascular diseases, stroke, Alzheimer's, dementia, and epilepsy. To be honest, almost every conceivable disease. Carbohydrates are the cause of almost every conceivable disease, mental illness, developmental disorder, and obesity. Rice, brown rice, wheat, bread, noodles, sugar, and sweets are the root causes. It is only natural that children who are raised by parents who do not understand this at all will develop developmental and learning disabilities. And since schools are giving school lunches that are guaranteed to cause developmental disorders and learning disabilities, it is natural that doctors can make a lot of money year after year by treating those developmental disorders. And I am convinced that changing the child's diet and withdrawing him from school is the best option for the child. This is because schools are institutions of society's root evil that not only lie about meals and school lunches, but also spread lies about everything. I, Endo, am an online gathering of people who want to escape from this kind of society, want to change this kind of society, change their diet to vegan or low-carbohydrate diet, and resolve their own trauma using the trauma note method. I am currently running a salon, but only for the Japanese audiences due to my limited foreign language skills. For viewers who felt it was too early last week, how do you feel about this week? Have you found the desire to change your diet, heal trauma, change yourself, and fundamentally change society? This society, including public schools, is sick, abnormal, diseased, mentally ill, slave thinking, and spreads false knowledge. It will stay like this forever if you don't do anything to change the society. If you are motivated, please come and join my Endo online salon, but only for the Japanese-speaking audience.
時を越える海風潮とむくろの波今私の間をすり抜けては嘆くうつろな瞳並ぶ鉄格子の国傲慢と裏切りを 諦めで潰した愛と綺麗に飾ってどれだけの命詰めばやがて気づくのでしょうか。血みどろの叫びすらも檻の向こうに隠して砕いてちぎって罪深き人の闇果て知らぬ欲は自己矛盾の声さえ雑音と捉える冷酷な作業のようにどれだけの涙飲めば世界は変わるのでしょうか。ほんのひとさじだけの甘さにいつまでも勝てない従うばかりで心の安寧と言い訳の山見つめても今も続く残虐に手は差し伸べられずどれだけの命詰めばやがて気づくのでしょうか。血みどろの叫びすらも檻の向こうに隠してく